making people understand where it sits. So if you've already adopted 45,001, it can really integrate well into the management context of that standard that you've already got. It doesn't need to be something that's seen as really overwhelming if you've already got a framework. So try and weave it into existing systems. And I think I talk about that because policy is another challenge. In the traditional safety space, policy is followed by an arrangements document. So really, if you're talking health and safety, you should have one policy. Now, this standard says, give consideration as to whether there is a need for an additional psychological safety or psychosocial risk policy. Traditionally, people would argue, but it should be one policy. You can't have 3, 4, 5 different policies, but this can be quite bespoke. So you've really got to work and identify what works for the business and how you're going to elevate it, because it is important and it does just get lost if you don't emphasize it. Another challenge is a policy for policy's sake versus what does it actually mean. Don't have a policy if you don't have the how-to behind that. So if somebody really wants to use the policy, how do you use it? What tools are in place to mitigate or reduce the risk of harm? That understanding for me about reducing risk of harm, you can't prevent every single risk, but you can do a lot to reduce it. I think a lot of people, particularly when we talk about a line manager, it can be quite overwhelming to see something like this and think, how do I mitigate every single risk? So we've got the 3 areas. We've got social factors, work environment, and then the more job design elements. Not everything is doable at once. So those challenges, I see that as a big challenge of the framework, is making sure people understand that you can't remove every single risk, but you can do a lot to reduce those risks and to start being able to talk about them, allowing people the space and without fear of retribution to be able to raise a risk, to say, this is bigger than just the one person who's gone off absent. So I think creating that environment is another key challenge.